So
Right, that's, oh. Is that you, Jordan?
Yes, it is. Hi, folks.
Oh, good. I'm glad the link worked for you. Excellent. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you.
All right. So every January, we hold elections for the Accessibility Advisory Committee. That's part of our terms of reference. And we have a couple of current folks that have been doing the job for the past year with this committee. The term of the committee is 4 years, so concurrent with City Council. We do have 3 roles. Last year we elected 2, and that may have been my novice, not also including a vice chair position, but our terms of reference does have vice chair as well. So we can go forward with the elections until we have gone through the elections. I'll be chair of the meeting because it is assumed there is no chair. So I'm acting chair in that absence. So the first position that we have actually I should go through the agenda, right? Meeting is called to order. I have no comments other than what I've already said. I'm going to skip down to the elections and we'll go through the approval of minutes and declaration of conflict of interest after. So the first position that we have for elections is the position of chair. Dawn McConnell held that position last year. And then we can accept nominations from the floor if anyone else is interested in the position, or if someone would like to see someone else also run for the position of chairperson. So we can accept that from the floor. You can also go right ahead and nominate Dawn if you are happy with the leadership, that can happen as well. I'll nominate Dawn. Okay, well done. Any other nominations from the floor for position of chair? Okay, seeing none. Dawn, if you're willing to accept, you've been acclaimed.
I am. Thank you very much. Technically, not if anybody were to ever question us on this, technically we should have another motion that nominations be closed. Right, because there is no vote.
Okay.
I better make that nomination, Diane. Thank you for that. For that role, then we open the one for vice chair. Chair, I think the other one is chair of site plan. I'm doing this terms of reference in my head, so if I leave this up, my apologies.
Yes. So Craig, if I'm correct on this, and thank you for the procedure, I appreciate that. Do we need a seconder for the nominations to be closed then?
And we need to vote on that.
Okay. In favor? Okay, all in favor? Nominations closed, and then Dawn is acclaimed.
Thank you very much, everybody. If one of my favorite shows on TV is Pardon the Interruption, and at the end of the show, Tony Kornhauser has a little Canadian flag and he waves it and he goes, "We'll try and do better next time." And that's the way I feel. Thank you very much, and we'll try and do better next time. Actually, we do have a vice chair. And we elected a vice chair last January. We took a vote.
Yeah.
It was Derek.
No.
And I would like to move
Not vice chair, site plan chair committee.
also vice chair.
Also vice chair.
Vice chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would like to move that Derek be nominated for the position of vice chair.
Okay.
And Carrie will second it. Are there any other nominations?
You have to take a motion to close nomination.
Thank you, Craig. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second it.
Thank you. And we have to vote on this. All in favor of closing nominations? Derek, we're stuck with each other for another year. I would like to talk a little bit about site plan, though, just for a minute. Derek was the chair of our site plan committee last year, did a great job. But for people who aren't quite sure about the site plan committee, because they do a lot of work that some of you don't really see. Site plan committee usually meets, I'd say on average, about once a month. skip some months, meet twice sometimes. Parts, it kind of goes with the development industry, so parts are more, different times of the year are more busy than other times. But I made a little list of some of the more significant projects that the site plan committee reviewed and commented on last year. So let me just go through that a little bit. It was the new finished rest home, nursing home. Which it had went over tender and came in at $100 million, so that didn't go ahead, but they're gonna tender it again, I understand. The new Northern Community Center, although we had commented on it originally, we went back and we went through it, some of you were there, so that we could provide follow-up comments. The new Civic Center exterior elevator, the proposed 9-story apartment building on Carroll, because that was a different building than what this committee had originally seen maybe 2 years ago. Major expansion at Prost Motors, a proposed new nursing home on the old Davy Home site, which actually took its access off Third Line. I don't know the status of that. I suspect they're having the same hiccups that the finished rest home is having with regards to pricing. And we did talk about the Queen Street downtown redesign quite a bit. So the committee has been involved with major projects. Did we elect a chair yet for the site plan committee?
We have not.
Oh, I would like to, could I move? Can I move? Is that right? Is that even I'm gonna move anyways, that Derek be appointed the chair of the site plan committee. And Carrie seconds that.
I do believe, Mr. Chair, you mean all in favor?
Well, we
We
need
need
it
to
all,
close it.
or we could close, either one works. Greg,
I will move that we close nominations.
thank you. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that again.
Thank you, Sandra. And we're gonna vote on that. Yes, we're gonna vote. We're gonna close nominations. So congratulations, Derek. You are once again the chair of the site plan committee. Thank you very much. I don't really have any comments, other than if we could just, for the benefit of everybody, go around the room one time and just identify ourselves. Carol, can we start with you?
Carl May, committee member. Brian Gerhart. Carrie Tuckett, committee member.
Peter Tenazzo, planning, Sioux Savory Planning Department.
And Diane Morel, accessibility coordinator.
John McConnell, committee member, now chair. Thank you very much.
Green Schottenberg, committee member.
Sandra Hollingsworth, city councillor, Ward 1.
Derek Lavalley, vice chair and second.
Red Fuller, committee member.
And thank you, Sierra.
Okay. Moving back to the agenda, next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Diane did distribute them as part of the agenda. Hopefully people have had a chance to look at them.
Fair.
Yes.
We forgot the other person online.
Oh, Jordan, I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
Hi.
Hi, folks. Jordan, I'm online.
You, but that's okay. That's okay. Welcome, Jordan. Thanks for
Thank
pointing
you.
that out.
Okay.
Approval of the minutes. Does anyone have any comments on the minutes, either additions, errors, omissions? Derek?
No, Diane reads, we go through over the phone, so I move if nobody has any objections, that I move that we take the minutes of the art. Anybody that have any objections?
Is there a seconder for that motion? Great, thank you very much. Can we call a vote on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. And the other matter which we dealt with, which is really a housekeeping matter that we deal with at the beginning of every meeting, is conflict of interests. Once again, unless this committee can make a decision or a recommendation in which you have a direct, you or a member of your family have a financial interest, you don't have any conflicts of interest. Does anybody have any conflicts of interest? Seeing none, we're going to proceed. Which brings us up to the new business. We have two matters on. One is a presentation from the consultants working with Tourism Sault Ste. Marie on the new waterfront design plan, and the other one is on the Vulnerable Persons Registry by Sharon Mackey.
And
I'll get that right yet. Shannon Mackey. Is Shannon going to be joining us virtually?
Shannon is gonna join us live at 3:00. And Nick and Travis will be joining us at 2:30. We're a little bit early, so maybe we can jump down to some of the other business.
Thank you. And the old business, there's 4 items on the old business, which were actually left over from our last meeting. We just didn't get to them due to other things that we were discussing in the meeting. So Diane, can I just turn this over to you?
Sure. So the multi-year accessibility plan, so this is our last year of our current accessibility plan. We need to work on a new plan. So I would like everybody on the committee, and it is part of your role, to think about what kinds of projects, accessibility projects are required in the city. What's needed? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? Is there anything that you would like to see done or done better or differently? There are legislative requirements, and I'll be going through the legislation point by point to make sure that we've got all of those items considered. But as a committee, we can do better than the minimum requirements in the legislation.
Okay, so, if, I'll just put in an example, the Finnish rest home, the site committee went and they put in a few complaints, there's high, low, dangerous places, and they reported it, but nothing's been done. Is there, so if you report it, don't they have to do something about it, or is it just that we're talking to them?
Maybe I can explain that for a bit. The site plan committee deals with new development.
Okay.
And that's where the legal clout is. It's actually contained in the Planning Act. So for major projects, like the ones that I just went through for you, other than the city projects, we don't use site plan control on ourselves. The developer or the owner of the property has to enter into an agreement with the city. And it's that development that we have an opportunity to comment on.
Okay.
So we had a number of comments on the Finnish rest home, from rearranging their parking lot so people weren't walking across the driveway,
Exactly.
to sort of evening things out. The landscape architect, he had a lot of ramps. He was very keen on ramps, but the fact is they didn't really go anywhere, and they just stuck up outdoor space in this big enclosed patio they had. So those suggestions can be incorporated into a legal agreement that is signed between the city and the Finnish rest home. And those are enforceable, big times enforceable. What you're referring to is some existing problems with the Finnish rest home
Exactly.
that we can't really do anything about other than offer suggestions.
Okay.
Yeah, but for new development, those are enforceable. Peter, did I explain that further well?
That's good to know, like,
Yeah.
that's sort of the grandfather plus. There's areas that are dangerous,
Mhm.
and very, not handicap friendly at all.
And you would think they would want to do something about that, yeah.
Well, everything is, we can't get people to work. They put out forbids and whatnot, nobody wants to do it. But whether that's just the standard answer.
Some of those may have been corrected with the work that was being proposed, because I know everything that was being proposed was basically on a single floor, like there was no grade changes anywhere,
Right.
where they connected back into the existing building.
Mm,
So that may improve some of the parts of that.
right. Well, okay.
Okay,
All right, so as far as the city's accessibility plan goes, I'd encourage everybody to take a look at the current plan, and I'm happy to send that back out again if, it's gotten lost in past emails. Take a look at it, see what kinds of things were on the past plan, and let me know your thoughts about what can come on the next one.
Out of curiosity, maybe not today, but in the future, can you outline where we fall in Ontario compared to other communities? I'm sure and I'm assuming that there is like, I want to say grading scale, but there must be some type of, I don't know, process that will let us know if we're like below, medium, or exceeding. You know what I mean?
Right, at a guess, with my experience in the past year and a half. I was a little bit concerned that we might be a little bit behind where we should be. But I went to an Ontario Network of Accessibility Professionals in Brampton this past fall in October. And it was really reassuring that there are many, many communities that are struggling with some things in the legislation. Accessible documents is one of them.
Okay.
Because I'm a little concerned that we are behind in
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other things that are very difficult to be able to enforce or make sure that we're going forward as well as the legislation intended. Ottawa is kind of our leader. They've got probably some of the best resources and manpower to do accessibility.
Okay.
And in their assessment, some of the legislation is almost impossible to meet.
Okay.
So they're kind of our leader. We're using them as examples, but realizing that they have manpower and resources to do what they do.
Okay.
So I think we're probably somewhere in about the middle.
Okay.
I think we can do better in the next few years coming along. But some of the legislation is definitely very difficult to follow.
Okay. So when we go through this plan as us, as individuals, you have more, well, for me, I mean, so you have more expertise. So I'm sure you're gonna highlight where we definitely should, focus on, and then our own thoughts too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can go above and beyond the legislated requirements. We can go above building code. We can do better. We should be able to expect better from our governments because they do have the financial resources, the manpower resources to be able to do better than a lot of our small businesses. So I really want people to think hard about this and be bold in your approach to accountability. And let's just see how far we can reach.
And I have one other question, kind of off topic, but not. Our post-secondary schools, like Sioux College and Algoma University as an example, do you know if they have a student rep that represents those with disabilities? And if they do we feed into them somehow?
No, we're kind of parallel to them. So each school is supposed to have their own accessibility committee.
Okay.
Or their own accessibility processes.
Okay.
They are required to do the same kind of reporting that we're required to do. And it's every 2 years required.
Okay.
And then an annual report as well to their governing body, whoever that is. So
Okay.
the board in the education system. So we have no influence over them,
Okay.
but the public can hold everybody to account.
So hypothetically, if one of these schools are expanding, there's Algoma University is thinking of expanding their campus, that was one example.
Right.
So would their committee do the audit of that new build, or would we, from a city perspective, because we issued the building permits?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be building code and the site plan control process. Am I correct, Peter?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That would be governing the physical structure part of it. Anything outside of that is their own.
Okay.
Diane, I'm gonna stop you right there for a minute if I can, because I believe that Nick from O2 is joining us.
Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Nick. Welcome.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you fine, Nick. Thank you very, very much.
Excellent.
Welcome to the Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting, and we appreciate your attendance today. Are you in Calgary?
No, I am in Toronto, so I head up the landscape division in the Toronto office, and we also have members of the team in our Calgary office as well.
All right. Do you know if Travis Anderson is going to be joining us today as
He
well?
is supposed to be. He said he could meet at 2:30, so maybe we'll just give a few minutes. But in the meantime, if you want, I can give you guys just sort of an update of where we are in the
That would be very
project.
helpful.
Yeah, just set the stage for everybody. So anyways, my name is Nick Onity. I'm an associate and senior landscape architect with O2 Planning and Design, as noted in the Toronto office. I'm leading the waterfront design plan for the city and tourism Sault Ste. Marie. We are very early in the process. We've just issued essentially a draft visioning document. And that visioning document essentially sets the stage for the master plan design work that comes in the next phases, which we are just starting. So what you'll see, and I will show snippets of the document itself, but it is essentially describing a little bit of our process. I won't spend it too much time. I've taken quite a bit out in terms of our process, our site analysis, but really focuses on the 3-day workshops and public engagement sessions that we had in mid-December while we were in Sault Ste. Marie. And with that came the launch of an online survey, which hopefully a lot of people heard about. It was, from my understanding, the most visited survey yet, an engagement process within the city of Sault Ste. Marie. And we had something around 3,700 plus comments from the website as well. So we are in quite the deep dive of those comments, along with the sessions that we held at City Hall that had a variety of different stakeholders, private landowners, property owners, other organizations, other departments of City Hall, some counselors came in. So what I want to show today essentially is the outcome of that process, a quick sort of design sketch plan that was developed. And what I'd like to do is it doesn't mean that you guys necessarily have to provide feedback on the spot. I don't want to put you on the spot necessarily. If you want to comment right away, I'm happy to handle some of those. But the other option is to take that away. I can forward on the materials as well. Travis has a lot of stuff in his office or in one of the boardrooms, and we'd be happy for you guys as a committee to put some notes together and send those back to us just for consideration. So by no means are we at a detailed stage where we can talk very specifically about certain elements of design, whether that be tactile, whether it be paving material. We're much more high level than that at this stage. So I just want to set that up. This is more about talking about program, distribution of program, thoughts about certain spaces, how to activate. And yeah, so from that, we'd be happy for you as a committee to put some notes together and send that back to myself. And we will incorporate that into our thinking and process as we go.
Nick, thank you very much for those comments. That you certainly have everybody's attention here. And
I'm
I can
sure
tell you, as a former city employee, at 3,700 comments to your survey, you won. That's it.
Yeah.
It's not close, okay?
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah.
wait for Travis, and in the best interest of everybody,
Sure.
be-
I can jump right in.
That
That's
would be great.
fine with me. Let me just share my screen. So can you see this document up on screen?
You certainly can.
Wonderful. Let me see if I can get this full screen. Okay, so
I'm gonna
here
pause
we
just a second, Nick. Jordan, can you see the presentation as well?
hopefully he can.
Jordan, your mic is off.
Maybe Jordan is off.
Maybe Jordan.
It's okay, go ahead, Nick.
He should be able to,
Okay.
Jordan should be able to.
Yeah,
Please
he
go
should
ahead.
be able to see it if he's in the meeting. It'll share directly with him. So here we are with just a bit of an introduction. Don't worry about the lengthy text. Just you can focus on what I'm going to say and talk about. This is basically just a snapshot of what our mandate is, and that's really looking to transform the existing waterfront into a bigger tourist destination and improve quality of life for local residents. So what that means is this plan is really an exercise in tourism, community development, placemaking. We obviously have to take into consideration existing infrastructure, existing opportunities, existing functioning spaces, and develop a plan that provides opportunities for tourism and economic development, residential infill, getting more people to the waterfront to really transform it and enhance it as a world-class destination within Sault Ste. Marie. It's really about putting Sault Ste. Marie on the map. And we've heard a lot about through our sessions how many people visit Michigan's waterfront right across the river, and why are people not coming in those sort of numbers to Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario? So that is essentially our mandate. We have been tasked with thinking outside the box, and really putting some big ideas on the table to really focus and make this a destination. So of course, with that, we look a lot about the history, the Indigenous history, of course, the industrial history, and the way that the waterfront has been transforming today. So we know there's a great legacy along this waterfront, and there's an opportunity to diversify the city's economy by encouraging new opportunities, new development opportunities, new technologies, renewable energy, and tourism aspirations that have been discussed through the RFP process and with our conversation with the city. So we know the existing waterfront today has undergone quite a lot of development, and there are some really great things happening for it. I see Travis has just joined, so that's great to have him on board because he's got a great deal of history here. And it's got a rich local history. We know it's enjoyed. This is a very long waterfront. It's well connected to a variety of different regional destinations, the Trans-Canada Trail, and a variety of different connections through bike and walking, not only within the city, but to larger regional destinations as well. And really it's about looking at what's working today and looking at how we can enhance this waterfront as a significant destination. So what we've done based on a lot of our work is we've started to look at some guiding principles. And I think this will be important to your committee to really look at and provide comment on from your standpoint and your lens. So one thing, a major focus is a waterfront for all. It has to engage the entire city, every age group, every ability. This has to be a place where everybody can come to and enjoy the spaces and places that exist along the waterfront. Because it's a waterfront, of course, we want to leverage the water's edge and look at how cities are growing and changing in the 21st century, whether it be around climate change, whether it be around open space offerings, destination offerings, and look at how we can bring in innovation and sustainability into the design plan to really put the city on the map, and understand that there is a changing climate condition that we're in, both economic and physically with weather in the world, and we have to situate this plan within that. Enhancing connectivity is a big component of this, making sure people can get to the waterfront safely, and reconnecting the downtown core, Queen Street, to the waterfront is a huge component of this plan. And that has to be considered through street networks, through safe crossings, and through pedestrian focused streetscapes, less car oriented, for safety and comfort and ease of connection to the waterfront. Of course, improving access and mobility is sort of a play off that as well. It has to be a place that prioritizes the pedestrian for comfort, for circulation, for safety. These are critical components. Any mode of transportation, whether it be bicycle, vehicular, or other micromobility option, we have to account for all those sort of modes of travel. And then, of course, it's about embracing and celebrating the Sioux's past, present, and future. So again, looking at the history of the waterfront, how it's transgressed and transpired today, and then what is the future of a waterfront like Sault Ste. Marie's, and how can we make sure that we do put it on the map and increase tourism, increase locals coming to the waterfront for a variety of different reasons. So just touching on the fact that I noted as we kicked off here, we were in Sault Ste. Marie on December 13th to 15th and did a series of sessions over 3 days, as well as public pop-ups at the Sault Market, at the community center, at the mall, to really get the word out that there is a waterfront design plan happening. We are very early in the first phase where we're developing the vision, and we want everybody to go to the website we've created with the city and take the survey, give your input. And the idea is really to try and reach as many people as possible to get input so we can compile all that information together and use all that data, commentary, et cetera, to our advantage to really create a plan that tries to suit as much as the population as possible. So that, as I just noted, is a significant process. The survey was extremely successful. The commentary is extensive, and we are currently in the process of compiling all that. And I think it even threw us for a surprise about how much response there was, because it is going to take us likely another week and a half, 2 weeks to really compile all that data. And the plan is that we will feather that back into the vision document just as an update. And then that will serve, of course, us moving forward as we begin to develop the draft plan that we will talk about in the coming slides. So in turn, yeah, go ahead.
I just interrupt for one question. Can you
Sure.
just clarify, is it the entire waterfront or is it just a portion of the waterfront?
Yeah, so we can look at this plan in the center of the screen here. We are essentially looking at the Canal District across from Whitefish Island, essentially all the way to the old hospital site, and that compiles all of the water's edge and to areas just north of Queen Street. So that is essentially our scope of work.
Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions? Feel free to jump in as I'm working through this.
We do have
So,
a question. Go
yeah,
ahead.
sure.
Did you look around, when you did the survey and stuff, did you look around the Station Mall area?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because there's paths, but there's no clear path for a walking or for a wheelchair person to cross. So we gotta cross over the sidewalk and then
Yes.
onto the busy road. So did you look at
Yes.
that? Would be a big
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, I will answer your question in the coming slides. So let me store that, because you will see when I get to the sort of concepts that we developed while we were in the Soo, you will see our thinking behind the Station Mall and its interface with the waterfront. I'm very happy you brought that up, because that was one of the first items we tackled when we got there. So very prevalent, and I appreciate that comment. So let's talk a little bit about what we heard. And this is not necessarily from the survey. The survey will feather into this, but this is really about the discussions we had with a variety of stakeholders, whether it be internal to the city, external, property owners, landowners, other groups such as the Rotary, some of the tour operators, et cetera. So there were some key things that came out of these discussions. Safety was a big one. We understand the current, the current urban situation that a lot of cities are in today. Toronto is not, necessarily different from those standpoints, but we understand safety, especially at nighttime, is a major concern. So principles of how we can design to create spaces that are safer, better lighting, emergency call stations, but also how people get to the waterfront from safe access and circulation, street crossings, which may not exist today, how we create conditions to enhance safety along the waterfront, but also enhance safety to and from the waterfront, both from a north-south and east-west consideration. That leads to connections. So again, a waterfront is a place for movement, usually laterally, but also north-south into the city as well. And it's movement of all types and transportation. It's public transportation, it's cars, but it's also pedestrians, bicycles, and other ways to travel along the waterfront. So a lot of discussion around more continuous pathways along the water's edge that have less braking, less maneuvering, that is often lost on certain people in terms of where they are. So how can we create a more continuous waterfront pathway? And then how do we extend those continuities into the city up to Queen Street? Again, that leads to pathways, opportunities for active movement, ensuring that there are opportunities for everybody to do certain activities, passive or active, along the waterfront pathway system. And that could be running, walking, biking, strolling, even opportunities for sitting, and making sure we take into account conflicts and how we deal with those conflicts to make sure that that continuous movement is safe for everybody. But then we also talk about here, we heard a lot about in-water activity and engagement with the water, touching the water, opportunities for canoes, kayaks, more interaction with the water itself, and even opportunities for cantilevering walkways out over the water to get different vistas, vantage points of the river itself, and of course of the major shipping containers and facilities that happen within the waterfront. Parks and public spaces was also very much talked about. There's a tremendous energy and interest around public spaces. And a lot of flexibility that's required for Ribfest, for example. We met with the Rotary, and they have very strategic requirements of how much space they need for setup. So we have to be very cautious of how we program open spaces, give them enough flexibility, but also ensure we're taking into account the needs of a variety of users. So it's, again, a mix of places to sit in solace or places to run and be active. The flexibility also means taking advantage of seasonality. We need to make sure that the waterfront is a destination year round. And that is winter activity, it's summer activity. And you'll see how some of that transgresses and plays out in the sketches that we've developed. Views and vistas were very important and talked about. Sunsets, opportunity to view the ships that come by, opportunities to view the planes that come out of the bush plane, the planes that come out of the airport, that offer very unique opportunities for viewing not only the river, but also the interesting things that happen in the river, habitat. When we were standing there, for example, we saw a couple, a variety of different bird species. We hear a lot about the diversity of fish. So the creation of habitat was also really talked about. And, it's waterfronts are places for people, but they're also a lot about biodiversity and habitat, which already exists within, rivers throughout the Great Lakes system. So a lot of talk about how we can enhance habitat creation, how we can provide opportunities for greater integration with that habitat, and how we could think about in the relationship between waterfront pathways and edges and habitat creation. Now that comes also with the idea of designing with climate change in mind. We all know that there's sea level rise, there's increased storm events and cloudbursts, there's changes in number of days that are above 30 degrees Celsius, which create tremendous effect on pedestrians using these spaces. So we have to think about how we provide, shaded refuge nodes for people to sit on very hot days, but how we can also think about, green infrastructure, energy efficiency, and water quality was also another component that came out of that. That if we want people to engage with the river, there has to be a certainty of a type of water quality that exists within the river today. Arts, culture, and entertainment was another big component that came to the forefront, and I think that is really the necessity of some of the facilities that exist along the waterfront that are going to be needing new facilities due to either depleting facility that's existing or expanded growth. So that's where we've started to look at the art gallery, the library, and the performing arts center that currently exists downtown. And is there a way to combine those uses and create a major waterfront destination facility, call it an architectural showpiece, that is a civic attractor on the waterfront for people to come to, as a major sort of performance museum, art gallery sort of facility. So, and that comes with the ideas of public art, installations, displays. The programmed use around those facilities becomes very interesting from a design perspective and from a curation perspective of how the surrounding open space of a facility like that really becomes a unique attractor, an opportunity for people to go downtown to experience what's inside the building, but also what's outside surrounding. So those were some of the major components that were talked about. But of course, we understand that there was a lot of discussion about what exists in the Soo today and not replicating some of that within the waterfront. And then additional comments about more activation of certain things like the Bondar Pavilion, and understanding that there is potential to create greater use and greater demand in some of the existing areas. So very quickly, and again, Travis might have some of these still up, but this was essentially the idea of how we discuss program and amenity and new ideas along the waterfront, which is this idea of a wall of precedence, that we had all the stakeholders come in and sticky and write their notes, what they liked, disliked about these things. So green is generally a like. Pink is perhaps a comment. Maybe it's not needed. Maybe it's a duplication of program. And then we started to develop a series of sketches that went along with these discussions that we had. So basically, general summary of things that were sticky. I won't spend a lot of time on it because we'll get to it on plan. But a lot of different ways of how people see the waterfront being activated, and some very unique potentials that exist within the site today that I think really start to promote this idea of the Soo's waterfront being a significant destination. So
Nick,
let's talk. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just stop for him before we charge ahead too much more?
Sure.
First of all, Travis, Alana, welcome. Nice to see you both. And Nick, we do have a question here. Sandra, go ahead.
Sure.
Thank you. Do you by chance have, maybe towards the end of the presentation, a link to one of the best practices, one of the best waterfronts that you have worked on, or that you think that we should look at, especially from an accessibility perspective? I'd be curious to see what you think is really a
Sure.
wow there.
Yeah. Yeah, I took it out of this presentation, but we did do some very strategic precedent studies of a series of waterfronts. So there is a promenade waterfront in Quebec that we've looked at. Thunder Bay's waterfront was something that we looked at. Traverse City, Michigan was a waterfront that we looked at. And then we did go a little bigger in scale and context to understand, accessibility and offerings by looking at the Hudson River waterfront in New York City. Now, the reason we did that is because what we wanted to analyze is what is the Soo waterfront offering today? And what are these waterfronts offering?
Up a little
Because,
bit, Nick?
well, sorry, say it again.
Can you say that again? Can you speak up a little bit more?
Sure. So the waterfronts we looked at, did you hear the waterfronts or do you want me to repeat them?
So I heard Hudson.
Yeah, so we looked at Hudson River's waterfront in New York. We looked at Promenade de Champlain in Quebec. We looked at Thunder Bay's waterfront. We looked at Traverse City, Michigan. Those were sort of the main comparisons that we did, but then we also, looked at some other ways that other cities activated their waterfront throughout the world. We looked a little bit about Vancouver's seawall, not necessarily as a great precedent. There's a reason why we looked at it, and we also looked at Halifax as another. So we did quite a deep dive on those, and those are in our report. So the report, we'd be happy to share that with you guys, because you can look at those and understand how we analyze them. And what we were looking at is what is the quality of open space? How is movement through those open spaces? Is it continuous pathways? Do the pathways, jog up and down like they do here in the city of Toronto? And then we also looked at what are their open space offerings. So
One last question, that out of
Sure.
those that you just listed, is there one
Yeah.
particular one that really is more accessible friendly? Is there one that stands out the most that we should look at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think most of the waterfronts we looked at from an accessibility standpoint are quite high in their accessibility. I would say, Traverse City, Michigan is probably a good one to look at. It's quite accessible. The Hudson River waterfront in New York is very accessible. New York obviously has high standards for accessibility. And I think Thunder Bay's recent waterfront revitalization is quite successful and has a lot of good opportunities for how accessibility can play in. Now, not every waterfront can you necessarily access every single area. That's sort of the nature of waterfronts sometimes, but for the most part, those waterfronts are quite successful in how they're utilizing accessibility standards within their waterfront to make as much of the waterfront accessible as possible.
Thank you.
And that is, of course, a goal that we strive for as well, is to make sure that when we're providing areas that you see, for example, in the bottom left corner here of terraced water access, are there opportunities to introduce ramps into these kinds of elements as well? So just going back on sort of the primary program elements, what you see is a lot of what came out of the wall of precedence. So a big desire for play space in Clerk Park, for kids and families to come to, a lot about viewing more opportunities to engage with and touch the water. And one of the big ideas was a sort of what we would call it's not necessarily a floating pool, but is it is a pool that projects out into the river. It doesn't mean that it has to have river water within it. It can be treated like a real pool, which has some great summer activation, but winter as well. Because of course there's opportunities that, parts of the pool can be frozen in the winter for skating. You can heat some of these so that in the winter you can also have sort of like a hot tub environment, very sort of Danish interpretation of a unique sort of amenity that could find itself along the waterfront here. Sort of the votes that started to get down in the categories were about festivals. There is a great desire that where there is parking, we want to make sure that we're thinking about green infrastructure and how to minimize the heat island effect of some parking. That's obviously a necessity in any downtown. Areas for food truck, more boating opportunities, more areas for eating, drinking, gathering, some public art installations. And then as we get down, I won't spend a lot of time on these because I'd rather get to sort of the highlights, and we'll talk about that. So again, you guys can get a copy of this. It talks about a lot of the key discussions that we had and the moves that we wanted to make within the plan. And here's the sort of overall sketch that was developed. But what I want to do then is get to.
I'm gonna pause you for a second. Someone
Sure.
has a question.
Sure.
It's Carol Magnan. I've got a question. So how far north are you going? Just to Bay, or?
No,
just a couple
we're
feet from the
yeah,
waterfront?
we're
You mentioned
yeah.
your car, so how far?
We're basically going up to Queen Street. And
So
that
that's
doesn't
Bay.
and that doesn't mean, so we're going right from the waterfront's edge all the way up to Queen Street. So that is our entire scope of work. And that doesn't mean to say our main focus is along the waterfront. What we would do north of Bay Street is really about connectivity. It's more about connections than thinking about redesign of your town main street, right? It's more about connectivity because we know Bay Street's gone under significant revitalization to reduce lanes and reduce traffic speeds. We know Queen Street has a lot going for it in terms of potential redesign and safety elements there. And of course, Spring Street is another street that's undergoing some significant revitalization to make it more pedestrian friendly. So our focus is really on the waterfront itself, call it up to Bay Street, but we are looking at connectivity all the way up to Queen.
And Nick, maybe I'll just jump in, like in terms of the overall scope of work, in terms of connecting streets, we're looking at East, Brock, Spring, although there's already a conceptual design for Spring, and Elgin. At this point, we're not looking at Gore Street.
Thanks, Travis. Carol, did you have another question?
Yeah, just one more question. You said green space. So the little forest that you got behind the Roberta Bondar place there, I can't remember the name of it. You got little sections there where the trees there, it's this kind of stuff, and I can't remember the name of them. The little forest right beside the OLG. Will you be expanding that into making that bigger as green space? Because I love that place.
Do you want me to handle that one?
Sure.
So at this point, we're just gathering concepts and feedback from the community. Certainly one, I guess, comment that's come up kind of consistently is whether or not, as you look at Spring Street being a shared street, whether some traffic calming measures should also be included on Foster Drive. So that could include potentially shrinking the roadway a little bit, which would provide more opportunity for, sidewalk space, potentially expanding, trees and green space. But however, at this point, we're still kind of looking at that from a more of a community feedback perspective at this point.
Yeah,
Makes
and
sense.
nothing that you see on screen is nothing that I'll describe either is set in stone, right? This is more of an outcome of discussions and the stakeholder work, and this is leading to the direction of how we develop a few options for a certain core area that exists with the Bondar to the Bush Plain. That is really the core focus of a more detailed study. But we are looking at the entire waterfront as a big sort of overall vision. Understanding that obviously this core area is really critical because it is the area of most city-owned property and private landowners, we are engaging and connecting with and supporting and trying to influence some discussions there. So, this is just sort of setting the stage and major framework. So maybe I'll start going back to the question about Station Mall, because it's a good place to start. And I'm not going to touch everything on this plan because there'd be a lot to go through, but really just want to focus on some of the key highlights. So St. Mary's River Drive and the interface with the mall parking lot to the waterfront. This is obviously not a great condition along any waterfront that you would see around the world, having major parking fronting your waterfront. So we had a great meeting with the mall owner and instantly came to him with some ideas of could we close and actually get rid of St. Mary's River Drive and activate that waterfront edge with some retail commercial offerings to really create a new frontage to the waterfront, create a full pedestrian interface between the water and the start of that retail development that you see lining this green band along the waterfront. So the intent is we would want to close the road at the Delta and make sure the hotel has a road connection. And any road access that would happen to the mall and across the site would come through the backside of the mall on the north side of this retail. So there is no pedestrian interface that would happen with vehicles along the waterfront edge. And that we see as a really strong move and a good idea, because again, it gets back to your comment about having to cross roads and sidewalks, people driving along the waterfront, and of course, just the general experience of having an expanse of parking as your sort of view and vista. So we see this as a really great opportunity. The mall owner was quite open to it. And the idea of having this sort of external activation along the waterfront edge is really a no-brainer. It's a way that could really highlight and activate this space in a very new way.
And Nick, I'll just add some additional comments. I mean, at the end of the day, the decision of relocating the road will come down to the mall owner. What we've had in terms of conversations is right now, St. Mary's River Drive is a thoroughfare. A lot of individuals that are using it, myself included, at the end of the day, are using it to get around to Gore Street and not actually using it to go to the mall. The thought process was, if you looked at relocating the road closer to the mall and then had, also mixed commercial retail between the mall and the waterfront, that would provide an opportunity where you're actually driving people to visit and shop at the mall. Now, there would still be a connection to Bay, most likely in the location of where the current, or I guess the past ACR building would be. However, it would not be directly on the waterfront. The other, I guess, element of interest there is per the current design, that's publicly, available, the mall owner is looking at a mixed-use, commercial residential property. And one of the elements, that was brought up, and again, this is the mall owner's, decision, was if you are trying to sell residential, you need the area to be appealing. And I think he understood, at the current moment, that waterfront is not necessarily appealing because it is limited in terms of space, and the roadway really takes away from that. So if you were to look at it from the overarching concept of viewing the waterfront as one major linear park, greening that area and beautifying it makes a lot of sense. But that's a conversation that would continue with the mall owner.
Nick, Travis, if we can, a couple of questions. Craig, did you have a question?
One comment, when you say mall owner, know some of the projects have been stopped. There was a project in the mall that was installed because of a new owner changeover. Are we talking the newest owner or previous one?
No, we're talking the current, yeah.
Current owner.
Mr. Moore.
Yeah.
Sorry for the confusion, but there's been a lot.
That's
of
okay. That's
moving
okay.
parts in that deal.
Yep. Yep. It's a
Carol?
good question. Yep.
Would you, you're saying you're gonna block off that road behind the mall,
Mhm.
St.
correct?
Mary's River.
Now, if you do that, that will, I think, I'm trying to do a visual here, I think that will solve our accessibility issue on the corner of where the casino is, Gore and Bay,
Mhm.
the government building. There's five entrances, and it's really confusing, and there's two islands. People can't cross the street to go to the mall, to Station 49, and it's been a real issue with the accessibility to get across there. If you block off that road now, I think that will solve that issue at that corner, am I correct?
Well, let me just speak to that. I mean, I think part of the issue, and would be a kind of part of the longer term piece that would need to be sorted, is there is the social housing that is on the south part of Gore, south of Bay, that we would still need to maintain access. But depending on how that road is relocated through the mall, there could be a potential separate access that might alleviate that issue. But I wouldn't want to commit to that at this point.
Okay.
Travis, we accept that's a design detail, but
Yeah.
that has been an issue with the committee for a while.
Yep.
You know, it is a difficult crossing for people.
And there's another question.
I just wanted to make a comment. Just for in-house folks, we have a carbon pickup at 15 after 4. So I just wanna, we have another presentation, how we doing time?
That's a really good question, Derek. Thank you. How much longer is your presentation, guys?
It doesn't have to be very long. It's up to you guys.
Well, why don't you charge ahead? And if we have to stop, we will. The committee does have another
Sure.
presentation today.
Sure. Yep.
And some of the committee, we have a very hard stop here with this committee.
Okay,
Yeah.
no problem. So I can be pretty quick. So
Thanks,
as we
Nick.
move to the central waterfront, the intent is to really engage with the plaza and create major connections to the Bondar through to the space between City Hall and Montana's and to Clerk Park. So what you see here is that there are a variety of landowners that do have some interest in some residential infill where this major existing parking lot happens. But the idea of a strong connection, a main civic plaza between City Hall and Montana's as a place for, you know, events, performance, whatever it may be. Normally with a City Hall, you do want a big sort of plaza space. For a variety of different reasons. And then, of course, better integration and activation with the waterfront. So we're going to look at how to create a very continuous promenade walkway system along the waterfront, and then opportunities to expand that waterfront through boardwalks, other ways, cantilevered walkways out into the water. And that would, of course, then connect with this idea of activating Clerk Park with a children's play environment, a major river pool and play hub along the waterfront's edge to really excite and create new activation of Clerk Park. With that, ideas of the slip that exists between City Hall and Clerk Park is a great opportunity with very still water for that idea of getting down and access and touching the water, and potentially ideas for canoe and kayak launch. Then adjacent to Clerk Park is this idea of a major architectural anchor, as I spoke of, where potentially the library, the art gallery, and performing arts center could connect together into one major use that has great park space, open space around it for both interior and exterior activation. We know the existing Suncor property, as I'm highlighting it here, is not owned by the city, so we won't spend a lot of time on it. The Bush Plane Museum is functioning quite well, but again, the idea of continuing that waterfront promenade all the way to the hospital site. And again, the hospital site becoming more about residential infill and more active sort of waterfront destination with potentially a pier, the idea of potentially an urban beach area and some multi-use fields. So there's a lot of nuance within this plan that I'm not describing, but these are sort of the bigger sort of moves that we've started to talk about. And again, none of the geometry and the way that this is being presented is set in stone. That is essentially the next stage where we're going into more focus on how scale, orientation, and design actually lands on the ground, and that will lead to a draft plan that we will likely be available around mid-March. And then we will do a second round of engagement where, again, your committee can be activated to come and give further comments on the plan. And then we would take those comments away and work forward the next few months to a final waterfront design plan.
And just one last thing, Don, you could punt us after this. I think what's been really great to see is the level of involvement that we've had so far. We are very preliminary in our consultation, but we had over 900 people fill out our survey. And I would say like 99.9% of which are incredibly excited about the waterfront and the potential here. So I think it really, there's a lot of great opportunity. I think the waterfront's, we've got a very great asset there, looking to build upon that to take it, even further. So we look forward to getting this conceptual design moved a little bit further along, and then very much looking forward to coming back to this group and the community at large for additional engagement.
Thanks, Travis. It is incredibly exciting. The city has made a lot of progress over the last few years on this. I think, the Bay Street was a huge step forward to connecting Queen Street back down into the waterfront. And I've seen the Queen Street redevelopment plans. They're also very exciting. So, yeah, this is something the committee is very interested in. And your process again, Nick, I know you summarized it with the timing, but could you do that once more for our benefit?
Sure. So the key thing for you guys is we're trying to get a draft plan done for around mid-March. And at that point, we will do another round of stakeholder consultation. So look out for that, and you guys will, of course, be informed about it. It'll likely be a similar process to what we just did. We'll come to the Soo, we'll have some sessions, we'll do another online virtual mapping tool, other sort of engagement process where people can comment on the plan. And then following that, we will move forward with creating the final plan with the output of that second round of stakeholder engagement.
Thank you. Just before we let you go, are there any other questions or comments from the committee?
I've met with them previously.
Okay.
Yeah. And accessibility was a big part of our discussion.
Yep.
I think it's Lisa.
Hi. Good. How are you?
Good.
Thanks very,
Good.
very much, guys. That was. We
Absolutely.
appreciate your attendance here today, and we will comment to you. Thank you. Looking forward to the
Perfect.
next.
Yeah, and we look forward to speaking with you guys more. So thanks a lot.
Thanks for
Thanks.
having us. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
And with that, we're going to move to our second presentation from Shannon.
Yes, sorry, Shannon, we're a little bit.
We're a little late. Yeah.
Than we should have been, but, now it's definitely the presentation is on the middle.
So, I, as you.
Sure.
It's the same, I just added a couple of extra bits of information that I would.
Yep.
Or is there, a form?
What kind of work?
I don't know, I'm not. What is that? I kind of don't think so. If you send it, Stephanie can open my mail and grab it from there. We don't have Wi-Fi in the building though. Okay, perfect. Okay. Yeah.
Then you're just computer to TV, I don't know. So. What do you think? Sign up on Zoom, share the screen.
My mail is slow too. I think you're right, it's slow. That's fine.
The building was put up.
That's right.
The record, my time go forward, no.
Well, right, so it's called the network, I think is now called Shaw or Rogers.
So it's called Rogers Open.
Yeah.
There we go.
Open my mail sooner too. It looks like it's deleting or not deleting, it's updating everything since last month on my email, so it might be a little slow. Yeah.
Get that out.
Yeah, we can help you with your email, Diane.
Yeah.
For Tiffany, you should be staying.
Yes.
Sending.
Just while we have this little break here, I would like, we were talking about site plan earlier, the site plan committee, Derek's the chair. When the site plan committee was set up last year, there was Carol, myself, Derek, and Dan on the committee, and Dan unfortunately had to resign. Which left us a bit short on the committee, and I'm trusting that Carol will continue to work on the committee.
Oh,
We
yeah.
get great support from Diane, but if anyone else has an interest in that, feel free to maybe call Diane, or if you have any questions and want to discuss it. It is a very, I don't want to use the word fun committee. How about important? Let's use that instead. It's an important committee that enjoys what they do tremendously. So if anyone else is thinking, I'm sure we'd be happy to have another member on that committee. And over to you, Shannon.
Well, while I'm waiting for the technology to fail me as always. My name is Shannon, I'm the Vulnerable Persons Registry Coordinator for the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center. I'm really excited to get to present at this meeting because I want to kind of go into a more overview of the work that we're really doing and what we're trying to achieve with the program going forward. So when I reviewed my PowerPoint, I realized there's some stuff that I didn't include that I should talk about today. So hopefully that loads. Also, thank you for accommodating me bringing my children. I have a scheduling work schedule conflict today, but they get to see me in action, I guess, which makes really no sense.
The rest of us are very friendly, not a problem.
My daughter is 5. Her name is Sadie.
Speak over.
Yeah, she's the far right hand side, and then Wyatt is 11 and he's on the left hand side. Wyatt, don't look up, he's on his cool.
My youngest son always to. Very on the sandwich style, yeah, like. There are many very around.
Before we start real quick,
And it needs to be.
I each back. I did the bridge.
Oh.
17% today.
Oh.
Yeah, some of the pictures you may have seen from the past, that was Mr. LaValle.
Yep.
That, I should find those. Do flashback Friday.
That'd be cool.
The program I do attached to you saw
Yeah.
on Friday morning.
It did come a long way since way back then. So what I'm gonna talk about a little bit is just a brief history, some of the VPR action, and it's not really in the slides, but what I'm envisioning for the future. So we can go ahead and start. I'd like to grand acknowledgement to acknowledge that we're meeting here in the Rocky Huron Treaty Territory and the land that we gather traditional territory of Asquamatic, specifically the Garden River and Batchewana First Nations, as well as the Métis people. As settlers, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet and work here, and we thank all the generations of people who've taken care of this land for thousands of years. So anybody who doesn't know, the background of the DPR, it started inspired by a terrible tragedy for one of our local young people. Lewis Whalen, he had a workplace accident in the summer, and then caused, amputations and severe burns in his body that allowed him to no longer be able to regulate his body temperature, required air conditioning 24 hours a day, heat to regulate his body temperature. He was in Southern Ontario during the 2003 first blackout that affected half of North America. And his PSWs had left for the day. It was just before cell phones were commonplace. He had cordless phones that failed in the power outage. No one was able to reach him, and he passed away, which was such a preventable tragedy if something like this had existed at that time. So the Sault Ste. Marie Innovation Center and Accessibility Sault Ste. Marie work together to create this program to ensure that people who are living with medical vulnerabilities or things that might put them more at risk if there is an emergency, that they're identified, that they're protected, and there's a plan in place for them. When they were doing some of the research, they discovered that data from the Hurricane Katrina tragedy in New Orleans, the highest percentage of people who passed away in that event were people with disabilities or older adults. There wasn't a plan in place on how to support people to evacuate them in that kind of a mass evacuation situation. And the ones that they were able to evacuate, they didn't have the facilities set up to support people who had. So unfortunately, a lot of life was lost because of that lack of preparation for an emergency event. So all of those terrible things created this proactive program in the VPR. It started in the Sioux, we extended in Algoma and Manitoulin and Sudbury. It's been adopted by the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, so Fort McMurray in Alberta. And we actually assisted the regional municipality of Halifax just the later part of last year, and they're starting to implement their VPR based on ours. Oh, the back one was just the timeline, okay. So we're good. So the VPR supports anybody who self-identifies as having an impairment or something that would make them feel they're more at risk in an emergency. So whether it be a mobility issue, hearing, vision loss, a cognitive impairment, a serious mental illness, or through reliance on electricity for life-sustaining equipment, we can register people to be on the registry for that. We don't require medical documentation. It's you know, health card or anything like that. It's a self-referring program. And yeah.
Because I live under Marchban's protocol, are they still doing that protocol where if somebody lives in a assisted living program?
Yes. Assisted living, that's actually what I was gonna get into on this slide right here.
Okay.
So I started this role just a year ago, last year, January 9th, I think I started. And I have a social service background. I worked with multiple people for many years before I started this role. And when I started here, I realized a lot of things that could be improved and things that should be included or excluded from the way that we run the Women Persons Registry. So one of those things is eligibility. There's a lot of misconception that if somebody lived at home or in assisted living, that they wouldn't be eligible for the program. You know, they lived at home, they had a spouse, or they lived with a child or a roommate. They were under the assumption they wouldn't be eligible, which is not, I think, not applicable to the situation. If a person is at home, they have a vulnerability, there is no guarantee that 24 hours a day, there's going to be a support person there to assist them. And especially if you're living at home with 24-hour medical care, you are amongst the most vulnerable. And when there is an emergency, we can't think on how people are going to respond to that emergency situation. We would love to think that if you're at home and there's a mass evacuation that you're going to stay as well. But, you know, what if they don't? What if they're more concerned about getting to their children or their family and that person is left behind? I mean, if there's a person at home with 24-hour care, we need to know who they are, where they are, and what supports they need to prepare for the event. The only thing is if they live in a long-term care facility, we don't have the capacity to have them registered right now. However, when I was doing some research last year, that gigantic ice storm that occurred in Quebec, I was reading a news report about a long-term care facility that had a resident who needed to get dialysis at the hospital daily. The nursing home staff were not able to transport her downstairs, so they had to call paramedics in to remove her from the building to bring her to the hospital. But if there was a VPR, some kind of plan in place to identify those people prior to those emergencies happening, then it, you know, it wouldn't have had to be a news issue because they would have had a plan in place for this woman who required life-sustaining treatment at a hospital and needed to be removed from the facility. So I'm not there yet. I have a lot of other things on the go, but at some point I would like to take a look at the long-term care component of it, because there are a lot of vulnerable people, you know, in those kind of situations where we don't know what kind of additional support they're going to need, regardless of what emergency plans the long-term care facilities have. There could be extra layers of support that would be beneficial.
Can I make an example really quick? Let's say now somebody has to move to the grocery store. Okay, and they're stuck on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That's me, like, everybody thinks because I have care in the building, that I have care in the community.
I'm on that. That was one of the first things that I identified when I took over this program, was realizing that people aren't always at home. We have, you know, smartphones, GPS technology, so many capabilities to have this program adapted to identify people when they're outside of their homes as well. So that is on my list, and I'm actively applying for funding so that I can make the changes to the program. We need to adapt the technology in order to make that happen, and I'm actively working on that.
Okay.
Grant writing as much as I can, trying to get the funding to make those changes, because it is important. You're not always going to be home. Emergencies happen 24 hours a day. We don't know when or where they might occur, right?
And the capital grant for OTF just came up.
Okay,
It's about improving accessibility is one of the pillars. So even though it's not capital per se, we're looking at needing software, that sort of thing. I would call Trillium and see, I think the deadline is, end of February.
oh, perfect. Oh, that's so much more time than any of the other grants.
Yeah.
One of them was like the date.
Yeah.
Or they come fast and out of nowhere and you have to get on them, but that's wonderful, thank you, I'll look that up for sure. Back to eligibility. When it started, and up until recently, it was under the age of 18 or generally not, eligible. However, another news instance when that school-age child in Sault Ste. Marie was home alone with her father and passed away all day. She had special needs that nobody identified for an entire day. Like, why was there nothing in place to identify these children who, you know, so that's another thing where I realized that, no, we're registering people who are 15 because impairment, I don't like the word vulnerability. I'm also working on changing that, all that kind of stuff with it. Anyways, it's not age specific, it's not demographic specific, they affect all people in all walks of life. It's such a broader scope than what we were originally doing, so I just decided without telling anybody that we should register people under 18 because we should be, because the child shouldn't be left at home all day without a safeguard in place to figure out, you know, what to do for that child. So, children with intensive needs require electricity, they've always been eligible, but I do include children who have autism, cognitive impairments, physical disabilities, anything that an adult person on the VCR would be on for, I can. You know, why the VCR is necessary. It's a very valuable service. They do get a lot of feedback from the community, from registrants about how much they appreciate the service. I've been getting a lot of calls and contacts from places all across Canada asking about how we do our program, so we know it's necessary, we know that it's valuable, we know it's appreciated. So I don't need to talk to you. Just a quick overview of how it works. We have 3 possible tiers of service. In Sault Ste. Marie, we offer 911 integration, we offer power outages or the electric dependence, and we offer large scale emergencies. So we'll move on to the next slide and I'll go into a little more detail. Large scale emergencies are, you know, there's fires, floods, evacuations, domestic attacks, living on a border city. Doing this job, I realized how many actual threats do exist in our community beyond just, you know, fires and floods. There's a lot of different kinds of emergencies that can come up. So having a large scale emergency VPR allows the EMCs for each community to have access to the data and be able to make their emergency municipality plan contingent on these vulnerable registrants and making an additional plan on how to evacuate people who have additional. We can move to next. Home emergencies. So in Sault Ste. Marie, we're connected to the 911 system, their record management system. I had a meeting with some of the people at the police station to find out how to use the data. So they have it not connected to the 911 system itself, because there was a little concern about if we wanted to expand what would happen now that they're working towards this next gen 911 with the GPS integration and how it would affect the VPR and that, but it turns out they don't use it in that system, it's in the record management. Entire different place. So it is simple to connect it in other communities to their 911 system. But basically we can move to the next screen and I'll show you how it works. So if 911 call is sent into an address, it'll pop up saying that the person's on the VPR and they're able to go in and see exactly what it is. And that way they're able to better prepare first responders for what they might need. So some of my registrants, I have them put, you know, if they have DNRs, I put that information in so that those first responders know that this person has a DNR. You know, equipment or medications they might need to bring with them. You know, can you record an area of what kind of information they need to know before they attend the scene? Fire services especially said that having the VPR for their system is very helpful because the more information they have, the better. And they actually respond to a lot more of the mental health calls than paramedics do. So being able to register information and having that come up for them before they get there really helps planning, if the person is maybe reactive to authority figures, they know that ahead of time, it's gonna reduce a lot of altercation. In addition to like the life thing. So if I'm talking too fast, let me know, I get all like chatted up. And then power outages, so in Sault Ste. Marie, we're connected with, PUC. If a person has an oxygen ventilator, dialysis, any kind of bed lifts, power stairs. What else? There's a couple other things that are coming on. Medication that needs to be refrigerated. There's a lot of diabetic medication and things like that. People have to take it, has to be refrigerated, and have another 48-hour power outage event. What's that person going to do? These are more things that came up in my talking with people and realizing like there's a lot more than just those basic power. There's a lot of electric dependent people out there that really need that for just basic function, aside from just oxygen or things like that. Anyway, about so if they register the VCR, we notify the PUC, and then if there's a planned power outage, they're gonna call each planned power outage that lasts more than 6 hours. They're gonna contact the registrants in that affected area and let them know that the power outage is expected and how long it's expected to last, so they can prepare. If there's an unexpected one that lasts more than 6 hours, they'll actually send the Red Cross out to check on those people. So either a telephone call, they can reach them by phone, they will attend their residence to make sure that person is safe and supported. And then they'll follow their emergency response protocols. I'm trying to get in touch with people from the Red Cross, but their staffing has changed a lot. So I'm still trying to track down who I can talk to find out how they use their, two. Okay, yeah.
It seems like technology now, like losing power, and you're saying about making phone calls. Most people have phones that, once the electricity is out, their phone isn't working.
So what we've learned is that if you have a phone that requires power, but you have an outlet, because all phones are still hardwired into a jack. If you plug the phone into the jack, it will call emergency response.
Can you repeat that?
So if you have a phone, so you have a cordless phone,
Not cell.
not that. Cordless phone, like a landline, if you plug that out of the modem and into the wall jack, it will be able to call. So that's the information that we've gotten so far. I haven't tested it in reality, but that's what I forget who a reliable source. Several reliable source. So there is that, but then also a lot of people have cell phones with help. But the whole point is if you can't, like, we don't rely on telephones to be able to reach people. That's why we have the list, so that people who have to access it have the information and they can go straight to the resident to support that person, because you might not be able to reach them. Yeah, those 3 tiers are at Sault Ste. Marie right now. In Algoma and Manitoulin and Sudbury, we're just at the large scale emergency, but I'm actively working on trying to get at least the OPP system somehow in there. So I have a meeting on Friday with somebody from OPP, so I'm hoping to find some contacts to start making that happen, to get OPP 911 system in the regions that we support, having their 911 for the VCR. Next. That's me. I'm a one-woman show. It's well for myself, so we don't need stuff. We don't. We can skip that one too. We're funded from the DSABs as well as part from the United States, the DSABs in Algoma and Manitoulin and Sudbury, Accessibility Center. We had some startup funding to get it started. Now we're actively seeking more funding to make improvements, because we haven't really changed this since 2011. The world is an incredibly different place then. Not just technology, but everything has changed so much. So we need to adapt the program to reflect the world that we live in now. Some concerns that I get is about privacy. So we do have a thorough privacy policy. People do have to consent with a wet signature or an electronic signature when they register online in order to give their consent to share information. It's only shared with people who have a login to the VPR and have a reason to access it, and I review that regularly to make sure that, you know, if somebody in a municipality has moved on the roll, then their access is removed and the new person is put in their place. So I stay on top of that regularly to make sure only the people who need to access it can access it. And we are working on, again, funding to do a full privacy audit as well, to make sure that we're up to date with 2024. Yeah. We can move to the next. There's lots of different ways to register. We have online, by phone, in person at community events. I'm working on new print material. So anything you see out in the community right now is now outdated. I'm just waiting for it to go to print. It has some new, less tech heavy, easier to read materials to send out to the community. We can move to the next. A couple of examples of how the VPR has actually been in use. 2014, there was a boil water advisory, and they were able to, VPR coordinator at the time was able to contact 11 registrants in the affected area to advise them of it within 30 minutes of the fact. Let's move to next. There was power outage 2015. They were able to, PUC, the emergency management team, and the VPR coordinator were able to pull the data, identify the affected registrants, and notify them of the power outage, and then they were able to provide that, Red Cross was able to pull the information, and then they were able to contact those people or go door to door to the people they couldn't reach by phone, to make sure that they were okay, because it was the first time that there was an outage lasting more than 6 hours, the first time that the concept of electric dependent PUC VPR was actually enacted. So it was proven to be effective and a good system. So it's not that, you know, we want to be out of power for that long, but it was nice to be able to test it, you know, theory of it. I mentioned that we had helped Fort McMurray set theirs up. They actually used theirs in a large scale mass evacuation emergency where they had a big flood. They were able to contact all the people on their registry in the affected area, remove them from their homes, get them set up in a hotel where the VPR coordinator and the Red Cross were on site to provide emergency support. So all those people in the affected flooding area were able to be safely and effectively removed and supported, which is, again, we don't want those things to happen, but we're happy to know that it's effective if it does happen. Move to the next. This is just me bragging. So the VPR is getting national attention, which is very exciting. We are the only one of its kind, like we're the originators of this concept. Most police services in most municipalities have a VPR, but it's very restricted on the information they gather and the way that it's used. It's only run through the police, not shared with other first responders or other agencies. It's usually just limited to mostly people who have cognitive impairments where they might tend to wander. But this one is the one that we have is the first that started. We did, like I said, the Fort McMurray, Nova Scotia, and then I've had Cape Breton and another municipality in Nova Scotia reach out to start their own VPR. So we actually, because the Halifax one got on the national, we won't watch it, but it's just there, you know. It was a 3-second clip of me talking and I spelled my name wrong, but it's okay, I was on news. It was very exciting, but it just, you know, it just proves how valuable the service is and how much I want it to grow, because there are people out there who understand the potential and the use of it, and those kind of media attention is so exciting. Just, I really want to see it in every community. I think everybody should have one, and not just the police services one. One of these where you identify all the people in your community who need additional support, because if we don't know where they are, how do we know how to help them? A big thing that's coming up from talking with, I had a meeting with the board of directors for the Manitoulin and Sudbury District Social Service Administration Board. And one of the things they mentioned was people who are living off grid in these more rural areas. They're, you know, maybe not medically vulnerable, but they're vulnerable because they're off grid. Nobody knows that they're there. If there is a fire and an evacuation and they need to leave and they don't know that they're there, how do they identify them? So lots of potential to expand and do things that we hadn't originally thought could be possible with the program. So, dream, next time. Oh, yes, and I was also on Information Morning for Breton on CBC Radio. That one is not my name, right? And you can go to the next, and that's all. That's me, that's how to reach me. Yeah, like I said, I'm really working towards growing the program, to having meetings like this, people who use the service, or know people who would need the service, or work for agencies or organizations that can help plan the service. It's just really valuable to be able to speak to everybody and kind of talk about why I'm so passionate about this program, not just what it is, but why it's so important and what I want to happen with it. So I'm really hoping over the next year that some of these things that I'm kind of stirring up in my mind can get real. I really hope so. I'm excited. I'm really.
Thank you very much, Dan. We're gonna open the floor up to questions here, but I do have a question.
Yeah.
And if you could just talk for a minute about how people find out and get on the system. And then my other question is, because the other version of the presentation, you had hundreds, you had identified how many people are in the system.
Oh, yes.
And
that was
there's a fair number,
Yeah.
and I'm just wondering how that stays current. Is that up to the person to contact you if they, for instance, move? 'Cause-
Yes, I'm going to the one woman show. So a little bit of what I do to maintain the program. So to get the word out, I have to hustle a lot, to do a lot of presentations, a lot of community events, to try to go and have information booths. I've been out at like the Laird Fairgrounds 2 or 3 times last summer, just trying to get people to be aware of the program. So it's just a lot of word of mouth and on the ground outreach, and making community connections. The community connections is the most important part. So have a really strong relationship with March of Dimes now. So I'm getting a lot of registrants through that program. So really reaching out to people who work directly with people who would benefit from the service is the kind of the best way. And then for materials, we will do mail out from PPP or tax bills for the smaller municipalities. Social media, we're doing it, but it's not really the demographic. So we weren't getting any metrics, and I kind of let that slide a little bit. But I'm working on a new media campaign, which once I get my new print materials, then I'm gonna start doing more media stuff. And then keeping it current, I reach out to everybody. It's supposed to be 6 months, but I have about just over 500 registrants in all the areas total, which has increased by about 200 people since I started. So it doesn't seem like it would be a ton to reach out every 6 months to people, but it has turned out to be a challenge. To try to reach out 6 months, it's more about 8 to 9 months right now. To reach out directly to each person, either through mail or by phone, or some people who have online accounts to update their information. I also check obituaries every day for all the areas that I cover to see if anybody's passed away. I don't expect, sometimes people will call me if their loved one has passed away. I don't want to put that on them because you're already dealing with, I mean, my father passed away, so I know the paperwork involved in losing a loved one. I'm not going to add an additional responsibility onto the person at that time. So I try to be positive and stay on top of that. So yeah, my days are full and busy because it's a lot of balls juggling in the air.
Sounds like you need a summer student.
And, you know, okay, like, because I on registered with us, and, I think it's just the greatest thing. But I did notice your numbers, okay?
I pulled data as well. I just pulled a screenshot.
Yeah, and I know people with vision loss, I think it said 95, and I think last time we talked, we didn't know the numbers, there's 628 registered legally blind people in the Algoma district. So there's a lot more people out there. Yeah, so if, we can reach out and get more people, and your list gets really big, because it's gonna,
That's what I'm trying.
okay, so you're gonna have to have somebody else sit you, because I know how busy you are, okay? You know, phoning or whatever, and a student or something probably would be a great idea.
Yeah, that's the goal. I'm hoping, the registered social service worker. So I'm hoping that I can get a college social service worker student at some point. or get, an NOHC, I always. Intern. So we are working on that, but I have to, increasing the numbers, getting more registrants to really show the need and demand for it. But yeah, you made a good point about the 600 and some in the region.
That's just visually.
Exactly. So one of the challenges with this program is that people probably should be on it, but don't feel that they need it. And that's a hard barrier to overcome, because it's understandable. I mean, I already mentioned earlier, I don't love the language that we use. Vulnerable, just because you have an impairment, disability, some kind of something does not inherently make you vulnerable. What it means is that you might be more vulnerable in an emergency situation. So, yeah.
Understand, yeah. Generation.
Yeah.
My disability has been converted. So I was less uncomfortable with. But when we were putting these words together, remember who was around the table? The folks were not later on, they were earlier on, and those words don't, it doesn't rankle me the way it does, say, a senior whose vision is not what it once was, you know? Yeah, someone who's hearing may not be what it once was. And I think that is probably on us right from the foundation. So,
I mean, some of it is the language, because from 2011 to 2024, because of both the very different place. Using the word registry in a Northern Ontario community with a strong Indigenous population, not appropriate. So I try to minimize that. We just call it BPR, just trying to make it known as BPR and minimize the language and more of the message of what it is without the focus of the vulnerability. So, yeah, because it is a barrier for people like, well, I don't need it right now. And even you were mentioning the older adult population. So as the population ages, you don't necessarily have a disability, you just have things that happen with advanced age. But it does make you more vulnerable in an emergency if you're starting to lose your mobility or your vision or things like that. So that's the biggest hurdle is trying to convince people that it's a good thing to be on it and it's not, a detriment. Doesn't mean that you're inherently vulnerable and you can't do things. It just means that for the city to plan and for responders to plan and all these moving wheels for emergency preparedness to be effective, we need to know who's out there.
Question, so you're talking about expanding the VPR. I think I sort of whispered, I think there's 265 people on it now, I guess. My question, I'm kind of naive in asking this, I'm sure there's an answer, but is there any concern, like you mentioned, you're a one-person show, and maybe is there a concern that as you expand the VPR, there's sort of some unintended consequences potentially? Like, does it water it down? Because now, I read earlier, PUC got in touch with 11 people in half an hour. Now it's 111 people and it's 4 hours or maybe 1,000 and I guess the second part to that question would be, A, is that a concern that it gets watered down? And B, are there things that would have to happen in order to expand the list? Not necessarily just at your end, but with the, the first responders, right? Yeah. So that it. I hope it's a fair question. Okay, good.
So originally, when they started the program, the buzzword was 1% of the population. But that turned out to be an arbitrary number. 1% of the population is like 725 people. We have more than 725 people who have impairments in the community. So I've kind of been moving away from that and looking at a way that you can kind of triage the program. Because right now it's just pulled as a Excel spreadsheet, which is filterable. So you're able to filter out addresses, vulnerabilities, things like that. So what I'm envisioning for when we update the software to make it more modern, really, come up with for it, but to make it more modern, to have the ability to have more advanced filters, to capture more demographic information so that we know exactly what we're dealing with. And then that way we could have 10,000 people, but it's not watered down because you're able to filter the information according to what it is. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I just have a comment, Chair.
I definitely would reach out to the new, youth hub on Dennis Street. They service 12 to 25, and they do have a social worker there. So I think that would be a good place to start, and, I'll email you and I'll email, copy Eric at the Boston, Ontario, so that would be a good connection.
Yes, I had, oh, we're talking about, agencies. I'm working on a way to adapt the BPR to also include our homeless population.
So that would be Joanne, Pearson.
Yes, I have,
Or Mike from the new, I would go community resource.
yeah, I worked with Ontario work for 8 years.
Yeah.
So, I have all those people, so I met with, Joanne and.
Okay.
And stuff, so, but I can't. This is like a rock and a hard place thing, like I have these ideas, but I can't do them without funding, and I can't get funding without increasing the numbers, I have to increase the numbers to do this, so it's just. Yeah, it's a big game of hopscotch right now, but trying to get all the pieces into place to make all that stuff happen, so. Me and the social equity coordinator for the Algoma leadership table are trying to adapt to BPR to include vulnerable populations that aren't necessarily, traditionally recognized. So homeless people, transient people, people who have addictions or severe mental illness, in order to reduce, police response calls. We have a way to get the homelessness prevention team integrated with the BPR. Like, there's a whole.
That's a good idea.
Dana, I don't want you to think we're sitting here making up lists of things for you to do.
No.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to know that my squirrel brain is aligning with what the needs are.
I think, I don't know if you've had any contact with anyone at Algoma Public Health, but they're the people that look at the city on a community-wide basis, like the part of the medical healthcare team, but look at it as a community-wide basis. Might be worthwhile to at least make them aware of what
Yes,
you're doing
I have
and see what kind of a response you might get from them.
Yeah, I'm.
And also sit on. Comment. I don't know how their thoughts are, but the Ministry of Health and Engagement. It's been my experience, once in a great while, they can find, they don't advertise it, they can find budgets. I've seen things happen that are funded by various.
Yeah, I think that you're right, Craig, but I just think it might be really worthwhile. Might be worthwhile on both sides. Yeah.
Okay, so youth hub, Algoma Public Health, two places that haven't. I talked to somebody that worked in one of, I think it was the nutrition services program. So she's on my list of people to contact, but trying to get more contact for these things.
Derek?
Yeah, I do apologize, but we are definitely to be
You got to
close.
Yeah.
To pick up. So Mr. Chair, if we could adjourn this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
Shannon. That was really nice.
I don't have cards, I don't really print stuff,
Okay.
but you can just info@soobpr.com will come right to me, or Diane has my contact.
Thank you very much. Given that I don't think we have a forum anymore, I think we're going to adjourn the meeting.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I think the law requirement is the meeting automatically adjourned, it becomes an information set.
That's right.
We're okay.
And the rest of the committee, we will carry